The Riverside High School 25th reunion was supposed to be a night of nostalgia and harmless reminiscing. Instead, it became the night my marriage exploded in front of half the town. My name is David Mitchell, and I'm an electrical contractor who's spent the last 25 years building a decent life in our small New England town of Millbrook. I married my college sweetheart Lisa, raised our daughter Jessica, and thought I had everything figured out. I was wrong about a lot of things. The warning signs had been there for months. Lisa coming home late from her job at the marketing firm, claiming client dinners that never seemed to involve actual food, the way she guarded her phone like it contained state secrets, the sudden interest in yoga classes that somehow never improved her flexibility, but gave her plenty of reasons to be out of the house. "You're being paranoid," she'd say whenever I brought it up, rolling her eyes with the practiced dismissal of someone who'd perfected the art of gaslighting. "I'm working hard to build my career. Someone has to think about our future." The jab stung because we both knew what she meant. I was just an electrician, after all, blue-collar, practical. Not the ambitious go-getter she'd apparently decided she deserved. But I'm not stupid, despite what Lisa seemed to think. I noticed things, like how she'd started wearing perfume to the grocery store, how she'd bought new lingerie but never wore it for me, how she'd suddenly become an expert on wine, rattling off terms like tannins and oak notes when she used to drink beer from the bottle. The reunion was her idea. "It'll be fun," she said, modeling a dress that cost more than I made in a week. "We never go anywhere together anymore." That should have been another red flag. Lisa suggesting we spend time together was like a cat suggesting a bath, completely out of character and probably hiding an agenda. The Millbrook Country Club had been decorated with our school colors, burgundy and gold streamers hanging from every available surface. A DJ played hits from the late 90s while our former classmates milled around, everyone trying to prove how successful and happy they'd become. Lisa had spent 2 hours getting ready, emerging from our bedroom looking like she was headed to a magazine photo shoot rather than a high school reunion. Her auburn hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, her dress just tight enough to remind everyone she still had the figure that had made her homecoming queen. "You look beautiful," I told her, meaning it despite everything. She barely glanced at me. "Thanks. Are you wearing that shirt?" I looked down at my navy button-down, the one she'd bought me for Christmas. "What's wrong with it?" "Nothing. Never mind." But her tone said everything her words didn't. The drive to the country club was silent except for the radio and Lisa's constant phone checking. Every buzz made her jump slightly, and she'd angle the screen away from me before reading whatever message had arrived. "Popular tonight," I observed. "Just work stuff. Sarah's having issues with the Henderson account." Sarah was her assistant, a 20-something recent graduate who seemed to have crises that required Lisa's immediate attention at all hours. Convenient. Inside the club, we were immediately swept into the chaos of middle-aged people pretending the last quarter century had been kind to them. Name tags with yearbook photos reminded everyone what we used to look like, creating a surreal atmosphere where past and present collided. Lisa transformed the moment we walked through the doors. The distant, irritated woman from the car vanished, replaced by the charming, vivacious personality that had made her popular in high school. She worked the room like a politician, hugging old friends, complimenting everyone's appearance, and laughing at jokes that weren't particularly funny. I followed in her wake, making small talk with guys I'd played football with and women who remembered me as Lisa's boyfriend. It was a role I'd grown comfortable with over the years, the supporting character in my wife's story. That's when I saw him. Alex Brennan stood near the bar, looking like he'd stepped out of a Men's Health magazine. Tall, athletic, with the kind of silver-touched hair that made him look distinguished rather than old. He wore his success like an expensive cologne, subtle but unmistakable. Alex had been Lisa's boyfriend senior year, the golden boy quarterback who'd broken her heart when he chose a football scholarship over following her to college. She'd cried for weeks, and I'd been the patient friend who'd listened to every sob story and gradually become something more. Now he was back in town, divorced from his first wife, running a successful real estate business, and looking at my wife like she was the one who got away. "David, good to see you, man." Alex's handshake was firm, his smile perfect. "You're looking well. Still doing the electrical work?" The way he said it made my profession sound like a hobby. "Someone has to keep the lights on," I replied. True, essential work." He turned to Lisa, and I watched her face light up in a way it hadn't for me in months. "Lisa, you look absolutely stunning. The years have been incredibly kind to you." She blushed like a teenager. "Alex, you charm her. You look pretty good yourself. Success agrees with you." "Can't complain. The real estate business has been very good to me. Just bought a place up on Hillcrest Drive. You should see the view." I knew Hillcrest Drive. $1 million homes with perfect lawns and 3-car garages, the kind of neighborhood where Lisa had always said she belonged. "I'd love to see it sometime," she said, and something in her tone made my stomach clench. "I'd love to show it to you. Both of you, of course," Alex added, glancing at me like an afterthought. The conversation continued, but I was no longer really listening. I was watching my wife flirt with her ex-boyfriend while I stood there like a piece of furniture. Other people began to notice, too. I caught the glances, the raised eyebrows, the whispered comments. As the evening wore on, Lisa and Alex gravitated toward each other like magnets. They shared stories about their high school days, laughed at inside jokes I wasn't part of, and gradually excluded me from their conversation entirely. I retreated to the bar, nursing a beer and watching the show. Other classmates tried to engage me in conversation, but I was distracted, focused on my wife's animated gestures and bright smile, expressions I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Trouble in Paradise? The voice belonged to Tom Harrison, a guy I'd known since elementary school. He'd always been direct to the point of rudeness. "Just reminiscing," I said. "Yeah, I can see that. Lisa's really reminiscing hard over there." I looked over to see Lisa's hand on Alex's arm, her head thrown back in laughter at something he'd said. They looked like a couple. They looked natural together. "Ancient history," I said, but even I didn't believe it. Tom shook his head. "If you say so, man. But if my wife was looking at another guy like that, I'd be having words." The problem was, I'd been having words with Lisa for months. They just hadn't been the right words, or she hadn't been listening, or maybe I'd already lost her and was too stubborn to admit it. The evening dragged on. Dinner was served, speeches were made, and the DJ played songs that took everyone back to their teenage years. Lisa barely spoke to me, spending most of the time at a table with Alex and a group of their old friends. I found myself at a table with other abandoned spouses, making awkward conversation while we watched our partners relive their glory days. It was depressing and humiliating in equal measure. Then, the alcohol started flowing more freely. By 10 o'clock, the reunion had devolved into the kind of party we might have thrown in high school if we'd had access to an open bar and no adult supervision. Inhibitions were lowering, voices were getting louder, and old rivalries and romances were bubbling to the surface. Lisa had switched from wine to vodka tonics, and her cheeks were flushed with alcohol and excitement. She'd positioned herself at the center of a group that included Alex, her old cheerleader friends, and a few guys from the football team. They were telling stories, laughing too loudly, and generally acting like they were 18 again. I watched from across the room, nursing my third beer and feeling like an anthropologist studying a foreign culture. These people had shared experiences I wasn't part of, memories that predated me, connections that made me feel like an outsider in my own marriage. "David, come over here," Lisa called out, waving me over with the exaggerated enthusiasm of someone who'd had too much to drink. "We're telling stories about the good old days." I walked over reluctantly, knowing I was being set up for something but not sure what. "Tell them about how we met," Lisa said, her eyes bright with alcohol and mischief. "At college," I said simply, nothing dramatic. "Oh, come on, give them the whole story." She turned to the group. "David was my rebound guy. I was completely heartbroken over Alex here, and David just happened to be in the right place at the right time." The group laughed, but it was uncomfortable laughter. Even drunk, most of them recognized that Lisa had just insulted her husband in public. "Lisa," I said quietly, "maybe we should—" "What? It's true. You were so sweet, listening to me cry about my lost love. You were like a golden retriever, just happy to be there, waiting for scraps of attention." More uncomfortable laughter. Alex looked genuinely embarrassed now, but Lisa was just getting started. "You know what's funny?" she continued, her voice getting louder. "I used to think I'd settled. Like Alex was this amazing, passionate guy who made me feel alive, and then there was David, who was safe, predictable, the kind of guy who'd never break my heart because he'd never make it race in the first place." The group had gone quiet now. Even the drunk people could sense this had crossed a line. "Lisa, honey, maybe we should get some air," Alex suggested, but she waved him off. No, I'm just being honest. Isn't that what reunions are for? Honesty?" She looked around the group, seeking validation. "I mean, we're all adults here. We can admit that sometimes we make practical choices instead of passionate ones, right?" I felt heat rising in my chest, but I kept my voice level. "I think you've had enough to drink." "Have I? Or have I just had enough to finally tell the truth?" She turned to face me fully, and I could see the alcohol and years of resentment in her eyes. "Do you want to know what I really think, David? Do you want to know what I've been thinking about for months?" "Lisa, stop." The voice was Alex's, and he sounded genuinely concerned now, but Lisa was beyond stopping. She was drunk on alcohol and attention, and she'd found an audience for thoughts she'd been keeping bottled up for years. "I still think about my ex," she announced to the group, her voice carrying across the room. "Alex here. I still think about him all the time, about how he made me feel, about the passion we had." The conversations around us had stopped. People were staring now, some with shock, others with the morbid fascination of witnessing a train wreck. "He had more passion than you ever did, David. More excitement, more everything." She laughed, but it was a harsh sound. "God, I miss that. I miss feeling alive instead of just existing." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel dozens of eyes on us, could sense phones being quietly pulled out to record what might happen next. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. This wasn't the woman I'd married, the one who'd promised to love and honor me. This was someone who'd been wearing a mask for years, and the alcohol had finally made it slip. "Funny," I said, my voice calm despite the storm raging inside me. "That's really funny, Lisa." She blinked, perhaps expecting anger or hurt. My composure seemed to confuse her. "What's funny about it?" I smiled, and I could feel how cold it was. "Well, you should definitely tell Alex's wife what you just said. She's sitting right over there behind you, close enough to hear every word. I'm sure she'd love to hear all about this passion you're talking about." The color drained from Lisa's face as she spun around. Sure enough, Jennifer Brennan, Alex's second wife, whom he'd married 3 years ago, was sitting at a table 10 feet away. She was a pretty blonde in her 30s, and from the expression on her face, she'd heard every word of Lisa's declaration. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Jennifer stood up slowly, her eyes locked on Lisa's face. "Excuse me," Jennifer said, her voice deadly quiet. "Did you just say you've been thinking about my husband? About the passion you had with my husband?" Lisa opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water. The alcohol that had made her bold 30 seconds ago now seemed to be abandoning her. That's not... I was just... Because if I heard correctly, you just announced to a room full of people that you miss sleeping with my husband. Is that right?" Alex had gone pale. "Jenny, honey, this is just drunk talk. Lisa didn't mean..." "Oh, I think she meant every word." Jennifer's voice was getting louder, and more people were turning to watch. "I think she's been meaning it for a while. Haven't you, Lisa?" The confrontation was drawing a crowd. People were pulling out phones, sensing that something dramatic was about to unfold. In our small town, this would be gossip gold for months. "I think," I said, stepping forward, "we should all take a step back and..." "No," Jennifer cut me off. "I want to hear this. I want to hear all about this passion my husband apparently shared with your wife. When was this exactly? Before we got married or after?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode, because everyone in the room, including me, suddenly realized that Jennifer wasn't just talking about high school memories. Lisa's face gave her away completely. The guilt, the panic, the desperate search for an escape route. It was all there for everyone to see. "Oh my God," Jennifer breathed. "You've been sleeping with him, haven't you? You've been having an affair with my husband." The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, the sound of chairs scraping as people moved closer to get a better view of the drama unfolding. Alex was frantically trying to do damage control. "Jenny, that's not... We haven't... This is all a misunderstanding." But his wife wasn't listening. She was staring at Lisa with the kind of fury that could melt steel. "How long?" Jennifer demanded. Lisa looked around desperately, seeking an ally or an escape route. Finding neither, she did what she always did when cornered. She went on the attack. "You don't understand," she said, her voice shrill. "You don't know what it's like to be trapped in a marriage with no passion, no excitement. You don't know what it's like to settle for someone who can't make you feel alive." It was the wrong thing to say to a woman whose marriage had just been publicly destroyed. Jennifer moved so fast I almost didn't see it coming. One moment she was standing by her table, the next she was in front of Lisa, and the sound of her hand connecting with Lisa's cheek echoed through the room like a gunshot. "You selfish bitch," Jennifer snarled. "You destroyed my marriage for excitement? For passion? I hope it was worth it." And then she was gone, pushing through the crowd toward the exit, leaving behind a room full of stunned faces and the wreckage of 2 marriages. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of my own voice, calm and clear in the chaos. "Well," I said, looking at Lisa's shocked face and Alex's panicked expression, "I guess that's our cue to leave." But I wasn't talking to Lisa. I was talking to myself. Because for the first time in months, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The ride home was a masterclass in uncomfortable silence. Lisa sat in the passenger seat, her face still red from Jennifer's slap, dabbing at her eyes with tissues and occasionally muttering excuses that sounded hollow even to her. "It's not what it looked like," she finally said as we pulled into our driveway. I turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, staring at our house. 20 years of mortgage payments, countless weekend projects, the place where we'd raised our daughter. It looked the same as it had that morning, but everything had changed. "What was it then?" I asked. "I was drunk. I was showing off. You know how those reunion things get. Everyone trying to prove how exciting their lives are." "So you made it up? The affair?" She hesitated just long enough to give me my answer. "David, you're overreacting. Nothing happened." "Jennifer seemed to think something happened. Alex seemed to think something happened. Hell, half our graduating class seems to think something happened. They're wrong." I looked at her then, really looked at her. Even with smeared makeup and alcohol on her breath, she was still beautiful. But beauty without honesty is just decoration, and I was tired of living in a museum. "How long?" I asked. "How long what?" Just don't. How long have you been sleeping with Alex?" She stared out the windshield, and I watched her decide whether to keep lying or finally tell the truth. The truth won, but just barely. 3 months, she whispered. 3 months. While I'd been working 60-hour weeks to pay for her new car, while I'd been planning our anniversary trip, while I'd been wondering why she seemed so distant and blaming myself for not being a better husband. Where? David, please. Where, Lisa? His place, sometimes hotels. It wasn't supposed to happen. We just ran into each other at that conference in Boston, and we started talking, and you decided to blow up our marriage for old time's sake? It's not that simple. I got out of the car and walked toward the house, listening to her heels click on the pavement behind me. Inside, everything looked normal. The family photos on the mantel, the throw pillows Lisa had insisted we needed, the coffee mug I'd left in the sink that morning. Normal, except nothing would ever be normal again. "David, please, can we talk about this?" I turned to face her. "Talk about what? About how you've been lying to me for 3 months? About how you humiliated me in front of half the town tonight? About how you told a room full of people that I was your consolation prize?" "I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, because we both knew exactly how she'd meant it. "I want you out," I said. "What?" "Tonight. Pack a bag and get out. Go to your sister's, go to a hotel, go to Alex's place for all I care. But I want you out of this house. You can't just kick me out. This is my home, too." "Your home? When was the last time you acted like this was your home? When was the last time you acted like I was your husband instead of some roommate you were stuck with?" She started crying then, the kind of dramatic tears that had always worked on me before. But something had broken inside me tonight, something that couldn't be fixed with tears and apologies. "David, please, I made a mistake. I was confused and lonely, and—" "You were confused? About what? About whether adultery was wrong? About whether your marriage vows meant anything? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You made a choice. You chose him over me, excitement over commitment, lies over truth. You chose this." I went upstairs and pulled a suitcase from the closet, then started throwing her clothes into it. She followed me, still crying, still making excuses. "Stop it. You can't just... Watch me." My phone buzzed. A text message from a number I didn't recognize, but the content made it clear who'd sent it. "Your wife's been meeting my husband at the Riverside Motel every Tuesday for 2 months. Room 247. Thought you should know. Jennifer." I showed Lisa the message. Her face went white. "That's not... Room 247? Every Tuesday? Is that where you told me you were taking those yoga classes?" Her silence was answer enough. "Get out," I said again, but this time my voice was different. Colder, final. She packed her bag with shaking hands, still trying to explain, still trying to justify what couldn't be justified. I watched her like I was watching a stranger, because that's what she was now. At the door, she turned back one more time. "David, I'm sorry, I really am. I never meant for this to happen." "No," I said. "You never meant to get caught." After she left, I sat in my kitchen and tried to figure out what I was feeling. Anger, definitely. Hurt, obviously. But underneath it all was something else. A strange sense of relief. For months, I'd been trying to save a marriage that was already dead. I'd been fighting for someone who'd already given up. I'd been loving someone who was pretending to love me back. Now at least, I knew where I stood. My phone rang. Jessica, our daughter, calling from college. "Dad, what's going on? Mom just called me crying, saying you kicked her out. She said you're being unreasonable about some misunderstanding at the reunion." It wasn't a misunderstanding, Jess. What do you mean? I closed my eyes. Jessica was 19, old enough to know the truth, but she'd always been closer to her mother. This was going to hurt her, and I hated that Lisa's choices were going to damage our daughter too. Your mother's been having an affair. She announced it publicly tonight at the reunion. I asked her to leave. Silence on the other end of the line. Jess, you there? That's not possible. Mom wouldn't do that. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I wish it weren't true. You're lying. You're just upset about something stupid and you're making this up to hurt her. The accusation hit harder than I'd expected. Jessica? No, Mom was right about you. You are unreasonable. You're jealous and controlling, and you can't stand that she's successful and popular, and you're just a stupid electrician who can't keep his wife happy. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, listening to the silence of my empty house. In one night, I'd lost my wife, my daughter, and probably half my friends. The story of Lisa's public confession would be all over town by morning, and everyone would have an opinion about what I should have done differently. But as I sat there in the wreckage of my life, I realized something important. I wasn't broken. Hurt, yes. Angry, absolutely. But not broken. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't lying to myself about what my marriage had become. And that, I thought, was a start. The next few days passed in a blur of awkward encounters and whispered conversations. In a town like Millbrook, news travels faster than wildfire, and the story of Lisa's reunion confession had reached legendary status by Monday morning. I found out just how legendary when I stopped by Murphy's Diner for coffee, and the entire place went quiet. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned, and I could feel the weight of a dozen stares as I walked to the counter. The usual, Dave? Asked Betty, the owner, her voice carefully neutral. Just coffee, thanks. To go? I understood what she was really asking. Would I prefer to escape the awkwardness, or was I going to face it head-on? I'll take it here, I said, settling onto a stool at the counter. The conversations gradually resumed, but I caught fragments that made it clear I was the main topic of discussion. Can't believe she said that in public. Poor Dave, he seemed like such a nice guy. Always thought she was a little too good for him. That last comment came from Margie Hoffman, whose own husband had left her for his secretary 2 years ago. Apparently, my humiliation was fair game for everyone's commentary. My phone had been buzzing constantly since Saturday night. Text messages from friends who'd heard the story, calls from Lisa that I wasn't answering, and a few messages from people I barely knew who seemed to think my personal tragedy was entertainment. The most surprising call came from Tom Harrison, the guy who'd warned me at the reunion. Dave, it's Tom. Listen, I heard what happened after I left the party. You doing okay? I've been better. I bet. Look, I know we weren't close in school, but I wanted you to know. What Lisa did was completely out of line. Nobody's blaming you for kicking her out. Appreciate that. You need anything? Someone to talk to? Help moving her stuff? Whatever? It was a kind offer, but I wasn't ready for sympathy yet. Thanks, but I'm handling it. All right. But Dave, don't let her make you think this was your fault. Some people just can't appreciate what they have until they lose it. After he hung up, I sat in my truck outside the diner and tried to figure out what came next. I had a business to run, bills to pay, and a life to rebuild. Feeling sorry for myself wasn't going to accomplish any of that. But first, I had to deal with the practical matters. I called my lawyer, Jim Patterson, and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. Then I called the bank and put a freeze on our joint accounts. If Lisa wanted to finance her new life with Alex, she could do it with her own money. The lawyer's office was exactly what you'd expect in a small town: wood paneling, leather chairs, and diplomas on the wall that were older than I was. Jim had handled our house purchase and our wills, so he knew our financial situation. I'm sorry to hear about this, Dave. Lisa seemed like such a nice woman. She's good at seeming, I said. Jim opened a folder and pulled out some papers. Okay, let's talk about your options. Massachusetts is a no-fault divorce state, which means I want to file for fault-based divorce, adultery. Dave, I understand you're angry, but no fault is usually easier and faster. I want it on the record. I want it documented that she destroyed this marriage, not me. Jim nodded slowly. All right, we can do that, but you'll need proof. I pulled out my phone and showed him Jennifer's text message, along with a screenshot of Lisa's location data from our shared phone plan. I'd checked it that morning and found a clear pattern of Tuesday visits to the motel district. This should be enough to establish adultery, Jim said. What about assets? I want the house. She can have her car, her retirement account, whatever. But I want the house. Any particular reason? Because I've been paying for it for 20 years while she was planning her exit strategy. Because I've fixed every broken pipe and painted every room. Because it's mine. We spent an hour going over the details. Jim would file the papers by the end of the week. Lisa would be served at her sister's house, where she'd been staying since Saturday night. The process would take a few months, but Jim was confident we could get everything I wanted. One more thing, I said as I was leaving. I want a restraining order. Has she threatened you? Not physically, but she's been calling constantly, showing up at my work site, trying to get into the house. I want it to stop. I can file for that too. Dave, are you sure you want to go this route? Sometimes people can work things out. There's nothing to work out. She made her choice. That evening, I was in my workshop behind the house, trying to lose myself in a project, when I heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, I saw Alex's BMW. I walked outside to find him standing by my front door, looking uncomfortable but determined. Dave, we need to talk. No, we don't. Look, I know you're angry. Angry doesn't begin to cover it. This whole thing got out of hand. Lisa never meant for it to happen this way. I studied his face, looking for some sign of remorse or shame. Instead, I saw the same entitled confidence that had made him popular in high school. How did she mean for it to happen? Quietly, discreetly, keep me in the dark while you two played house? It wasn't like that. What was it like, Alex? Enlighten me. He shifted uncomfortably. We reconnected. We realized we still had feelings for each other. We were trying to figure out how to handle it. By lying to your wife and mine for 3 months, we were going to tell you, both of you. We just needed time to figure out how. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Time to figure out how to blow up 2 marriages without looking like the bad guys? Dave, I know this is hard. You don't know anything. You know what you want, and you take it, just like you did in high school. The difference is, we're not teenagers anymore. Actions have consequences. What do you want me to say? I'm sorry? Fine, I'm sorry. But I can't change how I feel about Lisa, and she can't change how she feels about me. Then you should have divorced your wives before you started screwing each other. His face hardened. Look, I came here to try to work this out like adults. Adults? You want to talk about acting like adults? I stepped closer to him. Adults don't sneak around behind their spouses' backs. Adults don't humiliate their families in public. Adults take responsibility for their choices. I am taking responsibility. I'm here, aren't I? You're here because your wife kicked you out, and you're hoping I'll make this easy for you. Well, here's some news. I'm not going to make anything easy for you. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm filing for divorce on grounds of adultery. It means I'm going to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man you are. It means your real estate business is going to suffer when word gets out that you can't be trusted to honor your commitments. His confidence finally cracked. You can't do that. That's my livelihood. Should have thought of that before you decided to sleep with my wife. Dave, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. I'm not beating the hell out of you, which is what you deserve. I'm handling this through the legal system like a civilized person, but don't mistake civility for weakness. He stood there for a moment, apparently trying to decide if he wanted to escalate things. Finally, his survival instincts kicked in. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is. And if you come to my house again, I'll call the police. I watched him drive away, then went back inside and poured myself a beer. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the effort of not doing something I'd regret. The old me would have tried to find a compromise, a way to make everyone happy. The new me was learning that sometimes the best solution is to let people live with the consequences of their choices. My phone rang. Lisa again. This time I answered. David, thank God. We need to talk. No, we don't. Alex told me he came to see you. He said you were threatening him. I wasn't threatening anyone. I was explaining reality. This is insane. You're acting like a completely different person. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm finally acting like the person I should have been all along. What does that mean? It means I'm done being your safety net. I'm done being the guy you settle for when your exciting choices don't work out. I'm done pretending this marriage was anything more than convenient for you. That's not fair? Fair? You want to talk about fair? Was it fair to lie to me for 3 months? Was it fair to humiliate me in public? Was it fair to tell our daughter that I was the problem? Silence. I filed for divorce today. I continued. You'll be served tomorrow. I suggest you get a lawyer. David, please. I made a mistake. I can fix this. No, you can't. Some things can't be fixed, Lisa. Some things, once broken, stay broken. I hung up and turned off the phone. For the first time since Saturday night, The house was truly quiet, and for the first time in months, I slept through the night. 3 weeks later, I was beginning to understand what people meant when they talked about the stages of grief. I'd moved through denial, maybe this was all a misunderstanding, and anger, definitely anger, and was settling into something that felt like acceptance. The divorce papers had been filed. Lisa had hired her own lawyer, a shark from Boston who specialized in protecting cheating spouses from the consequences of their actions. The restraining order had been granted, which meant Lisa couldn't come to the house or my work sites anymore. Jessica still wasn't speaking to me. She'd apparently decided that I was the villain in this story, and nothing I said could convince her otherwise. It hurt more than I'd expected, but I was learning that sometimes you have to let people believe what they need to believe, even when it's wrong. The town had mostly moved on to newer gossip, though I still got sympathetic looks at the grocery store and the occasional free beer at Murphy's Tavern. Small-town life meant everyone knew your business, but it also meant people looked out for each other. What I hadn't expected was how the story would affect Alex and Lisa. I first heard about their troubles from Tom Harrison, who'd become an unlikely friend since the reunion. He called me on a Thursday evening while I was working late in my shop. "Dave, you need to hear this. Alex's real estate business is tanking." "What do you mean?" "I mean, people are canceling contracts, pulling listings, finding other agents. Turns out when your business depends on trust and reputation, publicly cheating on your wife is bad for business." I felt a small surge of satisfaction, but kept my voice neutral. That's unfortunate for him. Gets better. Jennifer filed for divorce too, and she's going after everything. Turns out she's got a better lawyer than he does, and she's documented every asset he tried to hide. "How do you know all this?" "My cousin works at the bank. Alex tried to get a business loan to cover his losses, but with the divorce pending and his reputation shot, nobody wants to touch him." After Tom hung up, I sat in my workshop thinking about karma and consequences. I hadn't actively done anything to destroy Alex's business. I just refused to help him avoid the natural results of his choices. The next day brought even more interesting news. I was having lunch at Murphy's when Diane Foster, who worked at the marketing firm where Lisa was employed, sat down across from me. "Dave, I hope you don't mind me bothering you, but I thought you should know. Lisa's having some problems at work." "What kind of problems?" "Well, it turns out she'd been using company resources for personal business, meeting Alex during work hours, using the company credit card for hotel rooms, that sort of thing. HR found out and, well, let's just say she's looking for a new job." I absorbed this information without comment. Lisa had always been careful about her professional image, and losing her job would be devastating for her both financially and emotionally. "There's something else," Diane continued. "She's been telling people that you're trying to ruin her life, that you're vindictive and controlling, and you're turning everyone against her." "What do you think?" Diane shrugged. "I think she made her bed. But Dave, you should know. She's not taking this well. She's been drinking, calling in sick, making scenes. Yesterday she showed up at Alex's office and they had a screaming match in the parking lot. The police had to come." That evening, I got a call from Jessica, the first one since the night I'd told her about the affair. "Dad? Hi, sweetheart. How are you?" "I've been talking to Mom." I braced myself for another round of accusations. She's not doing well, Dad. She's staying at Aunt Carol's, but Carol says she can't stay much longer. She lost her job, and she's been drinking a lot, and she keeps talking about how her life is ruined." "I'm sorry to hear that." Are you? Are you really sorry, or are you happy that she's suffering?" It was a fair question, and I thought about it before answering. "I'm sorry that she's in pain. I'm not sorry that she's facing the consequences of her choices. There's a difference." She says Alex broke up with her, that he said he couldn't handle the drama and the complications. That was news to me, but not entirely surprising. Alex had always been attracted to the idea of Lisa, the successful, beautiful woman who'd gotten away. The reality of Lisa, a divorced, unemployed woman with emotional baggage, was probably less appealing. "Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Okay." "Did you really try to save your marriage? Did you really try to work things out? Or did you just give up the first time things got hard?" I closed my eyes, thinking about all the nights I'd tried to talk to Lisa, all the times I'd suggested counseling, all the excuses I'd made for her distance and coldness. I tried for months, Jess. I tried to figure out what was wrong, tried to fix whatever I'd done to make her unhappy. I suggested counseling, planned special trips, did everything I could think of to reconnect with her. But you can't save a marriage by yourself. She says you never fought for her. Fighting for someone and fighting with someone are two different things. I fought for our marriage right up until the moment she announced to a room full of people that she was in love with someone else. Silence on the other end of the line. Jess, I know this is hard for you. I know you want to believe that this could all be fixed if everyone just tried harder. But some things can't be fixed. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive. Do you hate her? No. I hate what she did, but I don't hate her. I just can't be married to her anymore. What happens now? Now we all figure out how to move forward. You finish college, I rebuild my life, and your mother figures out what she really wants. Will you ever be able to forgive her? I thought about that question for a long time. Forgiveness was supposed to be noble, healing, the right thing to do, but forgiveness without consequences wasn't healing. It was enabling. Maybe someday, I said finally. But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It doesn't mean going back to the way things were. Some things, once broken, can't be put back together. After Jessica hung up, I sat in my kitchen and thought about the wreckage of the last month. 2 marriages destroyed, a business ruined, friendships lost, a family torn apart. All because 2 people had decided that their immediate happiness was more important than their commitments. But as I sat there in my quiet house, I realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was just done. The divorce would be final in a few months. Lisa would have to figure out her own life, just like I was figuring out mine. Alex would have to live with the consequences of his choices, just like everyone else. And me, I was going to be fine. Better than fine, actually. For the first time in years, I was free to be myself instead of the person someone else needed me to be. My phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Mr. Mitchell, this is Jennifer Brennan. I know this might seem strange, but I wanted to thank you for how you handled everything. You could have made this much worse, but you took the high road. I respect that. I hope you find happiness. I typed back, thank you. I hope you do too. And I meant it. Because at the end of the day, we were all just people trying to figure out how to live with the choices we'd made. Some of us were just better at making good choices than others. The for sale sign in front of Alex's house had been there for 3 months. According to Tom, he'd moved to Florida to start over, leaving behind a trail of debt and broken promises. His real estate license had been suspended after several clients filed complaints about his business practices. Lisa had eventually found a job with a marketing company in Springfield, about an hour away. She'd moved into a small apartment and was apparently trying to rebuild her life. Jessica had started talking to me again, though our relationship was still strained. She was learning that people were more complicated than she'd thought, and that sometimes there weren't any good guys or bad guys, just people making choices and living with the results. As for me, I'd thrown myself into my work and discovered something interesting. I was actually good at running a business. With the drama of my failing marriage behind me, I'd been able to focus on growing my electrical contracting company. I'd hired 2 new employees and was considering expanding into commercial work. The house felt different now, lighter somehow. I'd repainted the bedroom, bought new furniture for the living room, and turned Lisa's old office into a workshop. It was becoming my space instead of our space, and I was surprised by how much I liked that. I'd even started dating, though nothing serious yet. It turned out that being honest about what you wanted and what you wouldn't tolerate made relationships much simpler, if not necessarily easier. The reunion story had become local legend, the kind of cautionary tale people told at parties. I'd become that guy, the one who'd handled his wife's public betrayal with dignity and strength. It wasn't the reputation I'd asked for, but it wasn't the worst thing to be known for. On a cold February evening, I was working late in my shop when I heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, I saw Lisa's Honda. I walked outside, curious but not concerned. The restraining order had expired, and I had no reason to fear her anymore. She looked different, thinner, older, tired. The confidence that had once defined her was gone, replaced by something that looked like defeat. Hi, David. Lisa, what can I do for you? I was wondering, could we talk? Just for a few minutes? I considered saying no, but curiosity won. All right, but not in the house. We sat on the front porch, 2 people who'd once shared everything, now struggling to make small talk. How are you? She asked. I'm good. You? I'm managing. The new job is okay. The apartment is small, but it's enough. We sat in silence for a while, both of us apparently trying to figure out what to say. I wanted to apologize, she said finally. For everything. For the affair, for the way I handled it, for the things I said. You didn't deserve any of that. No, I didn't. I was selfish and stupid, and I convinced myself that I deserved to be happy, no matter who got hurt. What changed your mind? She laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Reality, I guess. Turns out that when you blow up your life for someone, you better make sure they're worth it. Alex wasn't. I'm sorry it didn't work out. Are you? Really? I thought about it. Yes, actually. Not because I wanted you back, but because I never wanted you to be unhappy. I just couldn't be the one responsible for making you happy anymore. I know. I understand that now. I understand a lot of things now. Like what? Like the difference between excitement and happiness. Like the difference between passion and love. Like the difference between what you want and what you need. And what do you need? To figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be someone else. To learn how to be alone without being lonely. To accept that some mistakes can't be undone. We talked for another hour, not about getting back together or fixing what was broken, but about forgiveness and moving forward and learning to live with the consequences of our choices. When she left, I felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. Not because I wanted her back, but because I finally understood that our marriage hadn't failed because I wasn't good enough, or exciting enough, or passionate enough. It had failed because she hadn't been ready to choose love over fantasy, commitment over excitement, reality over the dream of something better. And that wasn't my fault or my failure. That was just life. As I watched her taillights disappear down the street, I thought about the reunion that had started all of this, about the moment when she'd announced to a room full of people that I wasn't enough for her. She'd been wrong about that. I was enough. I'd always been enough. I just hadn't been enough for her, and that, I'd finally learned, was her loss, not mine. I went back inside my house, and made myself dinner. Tomorrow I had 3 job sites to visit, estimates to write, a business to run. Next weekend, Jessica was coming home from college for the first time since the divorce was finalized. Life was good, different than I'd planned, but good. And for the first time in years, I was exactly where I was supposed to be.